How to transcend the money slave system. Normal is getting dressed in clothes that you buy for work and driving through traffic in a car that you are still paying for in order to get the job you need to pay for the clothes and car and the house that you leave vacant all day so that you can afford to live in it. A quote from Ellen Goodman. This is how the average human being is conditioned into the slave system. Employeeism, the belief that you have to work for someone else in order to survive. Rentism, the belief that you have to pay someone else rent for your car, apartment, or house in order to survive. Taxism, the belief that you have to pay the government money in order to survive. In each of these cases, you believe that you have to give another person money or else. If you don't have a job, you'll be poor. If you don't pay the rent, you'll become homeless. If you don't pay your taxes, you'll be in jail, or so the story goes. Seen from this perspective, you were born into slavery. The definition of slave is someone who is not independent and who is owned by another. If your entire livelihood is dependent on others, you are owned by others. It took me a while to realize that I was a slave, but when I did, my first step to personal freedom was to become self-employed, to be my own boss. That does take some courage. Once that happened, my financial income was solely my responsibility. I could do what I liked, when I liked, with whom I liked, as much as I liked. I became fully self-employed at 27 after seeing how my work was making someone else rich, my boss, but not me. Sure, this kind of freedom is less convenient, less comfortable, and less safe at first. But in the long run, it is, if you know you can rely on yourself. Can you trust yourself? Discipline yourself? If so, you don't need others to discipline you. With freedom comes responsibility, and in taking responsibility comes freedom. The second step was to stop paying rent by owning my own property. This happened years later, but it was a great relief not to have to pay someone money just to have a place to stay. That means I don't have to work in order to pay the rent, like the majority of Earth dwellers. Then why do I work at all, you might ask? Out of joy, out of love, and that makes work what it was meant to be: fun. Free people do not serve others out of a debt or need for money. They serve others out of joy. Then why do I still ask money for my work? Because money symbolizes an exchange of energy. If I spend my time, it is only right that others spend something in return. As I pay nobody rent and answer to nobody, I am free. Well, almost. There is one more thing left: taxes. So my final step was to get a really good tax advisor who could save me from paying too much. As for the taxes I do have to pay, well, I've reframed paying taxes as paying charity. It feels much better to see it as voluntary giving out of love than an obligatory burden. But one day, in an enlightened civilization, we will get to choose and tick boxes on what we wish to spend tax on. It will be more of a voluntary thing. Who in their right mind wants to financially support this monolithic bureaucracy in their pointless wars? As planetary consciousness continues its unstoppable ascent, wars get less, bureaucracy is reduced, government becomes more localized, and therefore accountable, and life on Earth just keeps getting happier. No, I did not buy my car with credit or a house by taking out a mortgage. I paid for both in cash, because it is important to me to have no debt to anyone. Why is it important? Because it allows me to think, speak, and act as I please, without fear of money withdrawal. More than a decade ago, I was on the verge of having one of the biggest publishers in the world publish my book, Parallel Universes of Self. But they wanted me to remove the section that mentions aliens, because the subject of aliens, quote, doesn't fit with a book on self-improvement. As it is common on planet Earth, the promise of big money and fame was used to get me to compromise my truth and integrity, or water down what I wanted to do. But being monetarily free allowed me to decline their offer and publish the book myself. And that is why it's important to be free. Sure, I would have been famous had I accepted the offer, but I wouldn't be me. When people say to me that they find my books strangely unique and uncommon, it's merely because they are not watered down for mass consumption to what's, quote, acceptable to some editor's narrow belief system. Luckily, the Internet has allowed many people like me to express themselves fully. And yes, that freedom of expression has led to a lot of nonsense circulating on the information waves. But it has also spawned an unprecedented wave of mass creativity and learning. Creating your own career and owning your own property are therefore two of the best things you can do in your life to leave the money slave system. These are two things I recommend anybody strive for. You might ask, how can I do that? But that shouldn't be your first question. Your first question should be, why? And this chapter answers that question. If your why is strong enough, the how will follow one day. If your why is strong enough, you will find ideas about the how. If you see how the system is set up and how absurd it is, stripping you of your dignity and freedom, you'll naturally gravitate toward leaving it behind. You see, being an employee and paying rent might make you feel comfortable for some time, but are you really meant to do that for life? I guess if your job is very well paid and secure, then you are experiencing a lesser form of slavery. But wouldn't it be worthwhile to aim for being completely free? This is something to consider in the years that lie ahead.